We're going to talk today about the mineral collections of my dear friend Bill Pinch. And there are really two Tsumeb collections because there were two Pinch collections. We're going to go through both of those. But before I start, some acknowledgments. First to Jackie for allowing me to spend untold hours in the Pinch home and always being welcoming and wonderful, and how she stood it, I have no earthly idea. Michael Pinch, who provided me with a lot of these slides, to Mal, who provided me with a lot of important text references, particularly sizes on as you'll see, the slides of the second collection don't have sizes, so I've written them down, and I'll flip through those so that you can know that. Michael Bainbridge provided me with the slides for the first collection. John Schneider and Jeff Scoville and the rough people did a lot of the photographs you'll see. And finally, to my wife for putting up with me. I have no idea how she does that. And here's our friend Bill. And interestingly, he is posed in front of the Tsumeb cabinets. And I didn't realize that until I took a closer look at it. What he is holding, though, is a trilobite. That's the first thing he ever found as a 7-year-old on his aunt's farm. And the fact that he kept it tells you something very important as well. And here's a picture from the days of the first collection. And Megan and Michael were a little younger. Jackie looks exactly the same, except for perhaps the hairdo. But Jackie, my hairdo is different now, too. So there you go. This would be the early 70s. And this, I wonder if this will work. This is Bill with one of his very favorite toys. This Rolls was in Princess Grace's wedding party. The really cool thing about it is this, the hood ornament. Because ordinarily this winged goddess is standing, but this was Princess Grace's, and so it is kneeling. Oh. Royalty. Or maybe kneeling for Bill. Which either one works. And here's a very well-known picture of Bill. This is how I remember him, this or this, which was the standard appearance. And here's a picture of a little bit of the holotype pinchite. There were two things that Bill always said he was happiest about. Number one was having a mineral named after him. And he had that very early in his career. It was also in the early 70s. And the second thing he was particularly happy about was the Pinch medal named in his honor, which gave him a great deal of pride. Now, I was fortunate enough to get the second one, but he would always say to me, yeah, but I got the holotype. So there you are. So let's talk about his first Tsumeb collection. This is a little different because Bill's first collection was really to get the best of everything. And by God, he did. And Tsumeb was just part of the show. He was very interested in Tsumeb. As you may know, he was one of the authors in the Min Record in 1977 of an article on the minerals of Tsumeb. But it wasn't seminal. It was just part of the important localities. But aside from getting the best of everything, always to Bill, the importance of science was absolutely seminal. And so I want to just show you this from the first collection. You'll also notice that this is a pink label. One of his little affectations was if something was type or described, he did what the Smithsonian did and he printed it on a pink instead of a white label. I liked that. But anyway, this is a little tiny piece of rosacite that he found. We were wandering around here, and I get this thing to work. Yeah, there we go. It's about 2 centimeters. He found it in some little place. It was like $10. But he saw something, as he often did. And what he saw was that there were actual crystals of rosacite on it. And nobody had ever found crystals before, just needles, and so the structure had never been done. And he said, well, look what we've got. And so the structure was done on this particular piece. And because he saw that, which always astounded me. His eye was absolutely unparalleled. So while you're thinking of the beautiful things that were in that first collection, and it was magnificent, you should remember that he was interested in things like that. So again, the hallmark of the first collection, the best or most unusual one could obtain, were both common and rare species. So I'll just show you a few of the Tsumeb things that were in there. This Tsumebite, 3 centimeters, is pretty nice. And as you know, Tsumebite, real Tsumebite, most things are labeled Tsumebite or arsine Tsumebite, is really hard to find. It was only, as far as I know, from the first level. Yes, Mel? Yeah. Just the one find. It's very characteristic. It always looks like this with the azurite, etc. The twinning is very specific, and that's a damn good one. This olivenite, which you can see how high it is, 3.5 centimeters. Charlie Key back in '77 wrote that it was one of the best in the world, and still pretty damn good. A little tiny alamosite of 7 centimeters wide that all of us would own if we had the opportunity. Bill got to the Schneider-Honites very early, and so he had some good ones, and this is one of those. He also got to a find of some really lovely, nice budantite crystals, and this 5 centimeter specimen is a perfect example of those. This Baldonite makes me cry, 10 centimeters. Those are some mighty fine Baldonites. Now, Ian's got a very nice one in his cabinet here that anyone would want to own, but I'd also want to own that one if I could. Linerite, way, again, very high up, and the only find that I know of at Tsumeb. And they're very uncommon, and this is a really superb one of 6 centimeters high. This scorodite is very nice, but Bill actually, he knew of something on it, but he didn't really study it in this collection. Let's see if we can do this. See these little yellow things embedded in there? Those are betpactylites, about which more later. It took him a lot of years before he actually did some work about this. And this dioptase with anglicite of 10.8 centimeters is pretty nice. The cerussite, 9 centimeters wide. Another one, 7.5 centimeters wide. A mimetite, 4.5 centimeters. I love this tenantite. 5.5, you just don't see these of this quality. And of course some azurites, 9 centimeters on this, and 9.5 centimeters on that. And this leadhillite is 7 centimeters wide. And this anglicite, I think is lovely, is 4.5 centimeters wide. And the smithsonite of 12 centimeters wide. And that gives you a sense of what he was doing. Now, you think about the fact that he was doing this for every locality you could possibly think of, and it gives you a sense of what that first collection looked like. It was extraordinary. I don't think there's been another private collection quite like it. But at some point, Bill thought he'd worked hard enough on it, and there were a lot of reasons, but he thought it should work for him. And so it was sold to the Canadian government, and it went to Ottawa. But Bill doesn't sit without minerals. So I have this quote from Winston Churchill that I think is very apt. After Bill's first collection, this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. So he just started acquiring again. And we have Pinch Tsumeb too. But what he did this time was rather different. At this point, he didn't need to have one of everything. He didn't need to have the very best of everything. Now, if he got it, he'd take it. But he wanted to have something really good and representative, and what he really liked was classical localities, was history, was the best examples of species he could get, and he was interested in the size of crystals if he could get them, but perfection of the crystals was the most important. The color, aesthetics, if he could get that. Unusual or interesting chemistry was something that was extremely important to him. And as always, he loved rarity. Tsumeb, of course, fits the bill perfectly for that. No pun intended. Well, yes, there is a pun intended. Tsumeb, of course, has a long and interesting history. There are 293 valid minerals, which tends to increase with time, 72 of which Tsumeb is the type locality for. It has the rare elements germanium, gallium, and cadmium in it. In fact, except for one gallium mineral, there are 5 or 6, as I recall. The others are only found at Tsumeb. Gallite's found in Prince Leopold mine in the Congo and a few other places. And Bill just loved cadmium minerals. One of his little things was he was trying to get all the known cadmium minerals. And of course, the finest example of many species comes from Tsumeb. Some of these slides are from a talk that Bill gave at the ROM in 2014. And this is one of them. And Bill put down what he thought were the world's finest species, specimens of species from Tsumeb. And while one may disagree with some of these, obviously with the Alamosite you won't disagree, and with a number of others, certainly it's the finest of a number of species are found at Tsumeb, and you could certainly, if you wanted to, add to this list. And he talked about color varieties. Not so important to him in the second collection, but I put this slide in here because he did manage to find a blue legrandite. That's pretty unusual. And of course, people know of the blue wolfenite chilligite. And he made the point that some people just collect color varieties of one species. That wasn't him, but as I say, the blue legrandite made me put up that slide. He talked about the fact that many rare species, such as Schneiderhonite, were first discovered at Tsumeb and later been found at other localities. And even so, the best of them are still from Tsumeb. And things like Stadite are only known from Tsumeb. And things like Andy Robertsite are known from one specimen. There are some little bits, and I'll show you some in a little while, of Andy Robertsite, but nothing like that. I mean, that really is unique. Now, it's interesting, again, it's all about your eye. You'll excuse me if I flip some papers because I'm going to want to tell you about sizes, and they're not on here. The group of crystals up there is 18 millimeters, for those of you who haven't actually seen the specimen. And what happened was that this was at Springfield or some such show. I wasn't there, but Bill gave me a call because Carter Rich had been selling this thing that was labeled as Keyite. And he took one look at it and said, that's not Keyite. Let's see what that is. And so he got it immediately. And of course it became Andy Robertsite and Calcio Andy Robertsite, and is one of the more famous specimens in the world. That is no longer in the Pinch collection. It is in an Eastern US collection now. It is quite a thing. So the unusual chemical elements, he pointed out, again, cadmium, cobalt, germanium, gallium, etc. More cadmium, germanium, and gallium minerals known from Tsumeb than any other world locality. And here are the germanium minerals, and there's a lot of them. Bartelkite, briartite, brunogyretite, calvertite, isolite, fleischerite, etc. And there's more. Chrysolite, edoite. And again, these are all from Tsumeb. And you just don't see, you'll see odd germanium minerals, of course, from other places, but you won't see this level of concentration. So I took a few of these out to show you these pictures first before I get into a more organized thing. I wanted to talk to you about the elements. I like this piece because what you're seeing are azurite crystals sitting on a sulfide matrix containing germanite. And that you do not see very often. Maybe some of you have seen another. I really have not. And the piece is 11.2 centimeters. So those crystals of azurite are almost 3 centimeters. It's a first oxidation zone piece. And Bill got it from Sid Peters. I think that's just an astonishing thing. This is one of my very, very favorite specimens, and this is Bartelkite. Those crystals are about 2 millimeters. Let's see if this thing works again. Yeah. They're about 2 millimeters each. I happened to be there in Rochester when this came in, and it had been John Innes's, and Rob Selecki sent it. And we sat there looking at this for I don't know how long, because we used to play a game, and each of us would hand the other an absurd rarity, and the other one had to guess what it was. And if we didn't guess what it was, we never told the other person what it was. So it was an interesting, it was a Russian roulette kind of game. But anyway, the two of us sat looking at this, and we could not figure out what this was, either of us. We knew it had to be good. The matrix was filled with germanium, and it turned out to be the best Bartelkite crystals anybody's ever seen, and it is the structure type for the mineral. I adore that specimen. And there's Bill. I wanted to give you an example of Bill's label, and that's for the Bartelkite. This Bruno Guyerite is really quite excellent. Bruno Guyerite, when originally described, was not in crystals, it was just in coatings. And they're very small, and I'll show you some in a minute, but this huge piece has euhedral Bartelkite crystals, and this old, oops, let's try it again. This whole thing down here is just a part of a 2 centimeter stodite crystal. Ignore that. So that specimen was a structure type for Bruno Guyerite. And here's a little more of a close-up. And here's what the crystals look like. It's very, very uncommon to see this. So here's part of the type Fleischerite. That's about 1.6 centimeters. And the crystal group is to 8 millimeters. And that's first oxidation zone stuff. But you know, you shouldn't have just one Fleischerite. You gotta have more. So there's another Fleischerite. And this one's about 3 centimeters, and this is found in 1984 in its second oxidation zone. But that's not enough. You got to have another one. And this one I was with Bill when he bought, and this one is really interesting and unusual because not acicular. I don't have a close-up, unfortunately, to really show you, but those crystals aren't really acicular. They're actually terminated. They're flattened and terminated crystals. I've never seen another Fleischerite like that. It's about a 3 centimeter piece, and it's sitting there on a lead halite crystal, and it's the rough standard for Fleischerite. And a big lump of Chardite. Unfortunately, I don't have the size on that, but it's maybe 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters. And some nice little stodite crystals with lovelockite. And then the gallium minerals, as I said, all of them except gallite are only found at Tsumeb. And there's one of my favorite minerals is a songeite. Those twins are about 3 millimeters each. And of course, they're much larger. British Museum's got a centimeter crystal, but they're just so perfect. And that crystal, the twinning is just so unique that I absolutely love those minerals. And then just to show you, this is not the world's most exciting piece to look at, but Tsumgalite is so rare that I thought I'd show you what it sometimes looks like. Sometimes it's a little more whiter, flaky, and this one's a little bit more green. If you look at stodite or at songeite specimens very carefully, you can sometimes find it on there. So again, we'll talk about what was Bill looking to acquire for this Tsumeb suite. First of all, he wanted everything. He was looking for examples of every known Tsumeb species. The finest examples of the species he could get with documentation. You know, if it wasn't proven, he had to get it proven. Unusual combinations of minerals he loved and historical pieces he loved. So to do an overview of the suite now, we divided it into 3. I've got for you common species, I've got rare species, and I've got absurdly rare species. Because I think that's a good way to do it. So here we'll start with the common, although this first one is actually a trick because there's more to it than that. I'll show you another picture of it in a bit. But it's the anglicite crystals we're looking at here. And those are up to 1.2 centimeters each. And just, we'll come back to it, but just for fun, that's a big spray of alamosite with melanotekite on there. The whole specimen is about 4.5 centimeters. And this orichalcite, you can say, well, it's a really common mineral, but not at Tsumeb. Try and find an orichalcite from Tsumeb. It's really rather difficult. And of course, you got to have some azurite. This one's 6.5 centimeters and was collected in the 1950s. And I liked it because of when you backlight it, the crystals are so thin that you see that extraordinary color. And then this one, which is a Kegel piece, is very interesting and is about 6.2 centimeters. And it has, which I haven't seen a lot of either, you can't really get the clarity you see, but they're non-pseudomorphic malachite crystals on there as well. So that, as a Kegel specimen, is quite early. Just again, not a rare mineral, just a barite, but barite from Tsumeb is very, very uncommon, so I wanted to throw it in. And baledenite. This is the more typical way you will see baledenite from Tsumeb, and it's sitting on conocalcite. And they're small. You can see there I do have the measurement, and there's the millimeter down here. And that's much more typical. But I showed you the one from the first collection, and he went and did it again. And he found these huge baledenite crystals. There's some zinc olivinite on here, of course, but a lot of these big things are baledenites. And there's another one, because again, you can't have too many. And that's 7 centimeters, and the crystals are over a centimeter. And just a nice budantite. They're about 2 to 3 millimeter crystals, but just a good specimen. Again, he didn't have to have the finest, but he wanted a good representative specimen. The carmenite, I think, is very nice. And that's a 4 centimeter specimen, and the field of view there is about a centimeter or so to give you an idea size of the crystals, and they're just beautiful. On some of these, the tips of some of the carmenites, you can see, not on these particularly, but you can see greenish, little tiny greenish growth of crystals at the tip. Used to be called mineral TK, but what it is now is gartrellite. So look for that whenever you see carmenites. Right on the tips, you'll see a bunch of these green things. So you get a bonus mineral with it. And this brochantite is very interesting. It's about 5 centimeters. It's from the Shaler Memorial Expedition in 1922. So this Charles Palacci either found this or was given it as a gift. It's a very early specimen. Caledonite, again, you say, well, I know that from plenty of places, but you don't know it that often from Tsumeb. It's really quite rare, and it's all, again, I think, first oxidation zone, yes? No? And these are really wonderful crystals for there. Usually you'll just see sort of a smudge with some linerite. Just a nice cerussite. Another nice cerussite. Another nice cerussite. And a nice dioptase. Again, didn't have to be the finest. He just wanted something that was very good. And this dolomite I just think is interesting. It's 10 centimeters. And that's something that I haven't seen a lot of in that kind of quality. And this is very odd. I mean, can't get more common a mineral than fluorite. But I really don't know of very many fluorites from Tsumeb. Have you guys seen many fluorites from there at all? And yet it's on a classic Tsumeb ore matrix. I think there's no doubt about where it's from. That's a 3 centimeter specimen too, so it's a good sized fluorite crystal. And this leadhillite group is extremely nice. I think I have the size for you. Yes, it is 10 centimeters. So that's pretty good. And another linarite. This one is 6 centimeters. These are really hard to get. I mean, if you try to get things like this, you find how difficult this is. And that's a 2 centimeter field of view. This may have been actually, this is a very old piece. It may have been from the surface outcrop. And I don't have the size on that. Oh, yes, it's on there. The mimetite, you can see the 1 centimeter mark. And a nice sylvanite. That's about 6.5 centimeters. Crystals are to about a centimeter. And another nice one. And that's a 6 centimeter piece as well. And a scorodite. This was from a slightly later find of scorodite from that which I showed you before. We'll get into some more scoridites in a second, because now we're going to talk about the rarer things. And there's that alamosite again, but this was on the anglicite, but now I'm pointing out the alamosite crystals, and it's a really good group of alamosites. And arsen brachybushite, really nice again. If you find it, you don't tend to find it in nice crystals, and these are really good crystals. And arsen tsumebite isn't rare. You see a fair number, and these are small crystals. But they're so well defined, it was such a nice picture, I thought I would put it in there. Usually it's more of a druzy coating. And this is interesting. This is a betpactolite. It's a mass of it. It's 5.6 centimeters. It was collected by John Innes on May 13th, 1983. And Bill thought it was extremely interesting, and so did some other people, including a group with Tony Camp in it, and redefined the entire betpactolite species based on Bill's specimens. So this became betpactolite CACA. And this is a really superb specimen, became betpactolite CAMG. And now you can see what was in, these are outside of it, but now you can see what was in the scoridites. And these are freestanding. So if you have little yellow crystals sitting inside of your scoridites, those are betpactolite CAMG. And you can label it as such. That's the only betpactolite that occurs inside of the scorodite. And that, of course, is the holotype specimen. And there's another one. And you can see what I'm talking about. You won't see those freestanding ones very much. That is really rare. But this is about a 2 centimeter specimen. And it's actually the structure type, because Frank Hawthorne did the work on this one. But this is much more typical. This is more rich than you will often see it. But you see it's all embedded within the scorodite. So look for that, because it will be there in a fair number of them. This is a mineral called bradyczekite, and it's a sodium copper arsenate, for those of you who don't know what it is. The type locality is Kamchatka, but Bill found this, and it's the deep blue. And I don't know of another one. There probably is, because there's this whole mess of blue stuff sitting in this green gel that's called GS1, that when you heat and powder, Mel and I were just talking about this, comes out to be keratinogyte, but it has no crystal structure. But anyway, this is the only bradyczekite that I know of. What's interesting is up here, these paler things, cleavages, those are Andy Robertsite. So there is a little more Andy Robertsite, but it doesn't look like that first specimen. Eliite is another extremely rare mineral, and it didn't first come from Tsumeb. The type locality for this is Ward, Nevada. But there are a couple of pieces from Tsumeb, and as usual with Tsumeb, it's prettier than anything else from anywhere else. So this is quite rare. This is another thing that John Innes found. And it's an 11 millimeter specimen. Just a nice ferrylothermierite. One sees this. One doesn't often see it in really, really nice crystals, so I thought I would show you that. And this is interesting. If you see any old specimens that are labeled stibnite from Tsumeb. First of all, buy them. Secondly, they're not stibnite. What they are is ferrotobiite, which is, as you might guess, a mineral from Japan originally. It's a copper, silver, lead sulfide that's really only found a few places. These are the finest crystals, as Tsumeb is wont to do. I think I have a close-up. Yes, I do. And the structure was done on this particular piece. So that's something to remember. Might go outside and look and see if anybody has a stibnite. Gaitite, an extremely rare mineral with some more ferrylothermierite crystals, so I thought I would show you that. And heddiphane, which is found in many places, but not often as good as it is at Tsumeb, and there really are very few of them. That's a 3-centimeter specimen. As you may know, it's close relative of mimetite. I show this hidalgoite, which is a mineral that you find in a number of places in Mexico and in the United States. But what you don't find it as is euhedral crystals. And this is coated with small euhedral crystals. And I really am not aware of any place else that does that. Specimen is 4 centimeters. Kegelite is now found a few places, but Tsumeb is the type locality and far and away the best. This has the size on it, yes. So that's a little over a centimeter specimen, and all of those plates there are kegelites. That's a superb example. And you got to show a keyite. We've all seen some superb keyites, and Bill had some good ones, and he liked keyite, and Charlie Key was a very good friend of his. And there's just some nice, really fine euhedral keyite crystals. They're always very small. And I'm showing, you say, well, gee, that looks like ludlockite to me. It is. But what Bill managed to notice on this ludlockite was that thing, and that's a group of kedegite crystals. And there's another one, I mean, you know it from Apamea, it looks much prettier. You know it from Schneeberg, looks much prettier. But I didn't know it from Tsumeb. But he noticed that, and that's what it turned out to be. I'm unaware of another. Maybe there likely are some others, but nobody's bothered to notice them. Lamerite, the type locality was really just one specimen, and that was in Bolivia that Werner Parr found. But Tsumeb, John Innes found this group of these crystals that were absolutely the finest in the world. Now it's somewhat easier because there have been some finds in Chile, but this is still superb stuff. And that's a 9-centimeter, part of a 9-centimeter specimen, so it's just filled with lamerite. And some nice lead halites with some kegelites. And legrandite. And Tsumeb did a nice job with legrandite, which is a pretty rare mineral all in all. And that zinc pocket at the 44 level in the third oxidation zone produced some gorgeous things. That's a 4-centimeter specimen. And because you can't have too many, that's a 3.5-centimeter specimen. And there are other things found with the legrandite, such as latite and rhinorite, about which more in a moment. Nice ludlockite. Lucranite, which is just a very rare mineral. I wrote down the formula for those of you who would care. It's in the tsumcorite group. It's a calcium, copper, zinc, iron, arsenate. And I don't know any place else that it's found. It may be. That's an 18-millimeter field of view there. It's just a very rare mineral. So Bill needed it. This mobiite is really interesting. Because it was first thought to be a red tsumcorite. And then it was found out to be mobiite, which is a paramorph of carmonite. And they're really quite striking, as you see, and they're beautiful specimens. There aren't a whole lot of them, and that's a nice one. Molybdofornicite, another real rarity. It's a lead, copper, molybdate, chromate, arsenate. This is about a 3 centimeter piece that's from. And this is actually the type locality, but again, this has been found in Chile, so you can see a number of these. But to my eye, the Tsumeb stuff is still really wonderful. This otavite is quite striking. Get you the size of that if I can. That is 8.6 centimeters. And everything you see there is otavite, which was, I believe, the first mineral named from Tsumeb, yes? Yes. It's just a stunning piece. A little bit of rosacite there up in the corner. Paradigmite, very few of these. Came from that same zinc pocket. It's a 3.3 centimeter specimen, and the crystals are at about 8 millimeters. This is stunning. These are the best plumbotsumite crystals that I know of. Let me get you the size on that piece. That is a 3 centimeter piece. And just as an extra bonus, that's an 8 millimeter group of alamosites sitting with it. But those are just huge. Usually, if you look at an alamosite specimen, you'll see these little tiny pseudo-hexagonal things that are the plumbosumite that are hiding in the corners, but that thing is ridiculous. And more Schneiderhonites, quite good ones. That first one was 6 centimeters, and the next one is, sorry about that, 4.5 centimeters. Beautiful. And some Schultenite single crystals, incomplete unfortunately, but the one on the left is 2 centimeters and the one on the right is 1.5 centimeters. There was a bigger one in the first collection, as I know, because Bill traded it from me. But those things are hard to get. Segnetite, which the type locality of which is Broken Hill, but very, very rare from Tsumeb, but this is a very nice segnetite crystal. The specimen it's from is 3.5 centimeters. Yeah, and the crystal's a couple of millimeters. This is very interesting. Spertinia is just a copper hydroxide. And the type locality is the Jeffrey Mine in Quebec. And it was never known from Tsumeb, and it still isn't, except for this piece. And it's been checked and rechecked because nobody believed it. But it's spertiniate, and those are 18 millimeter groups, and it's a 3.2 centimeter specimen. Just an extraordinarily odd and interesting thing. Talmasite too. I mean, you don't see that from Tsumeb. This piece is 4 centimeters in size, 15 millimeter crystals. And I just show you a very nice Tsumkorite. Ivanite is also extraordinarily rare from, well, pretty much anywhere. Found in France originally, but there are only a couple specimens known from Tsumeb. It's all the blue stuff. And the piece itself is about 3.5 centimeters. As a bonus, there are these white crystals here. And we don't know what they are yet, but they're an aluminate, a primary aluminate. And the quality of the crystals isn't so good, but we're still trying to figure out what that might actually be. And now, just a few moments for absurdly rare things. That ecotite qualifies. I don't know how many there are, but there are only a few. And that's the first one that Bill got, but being Bill, this appeared and he got that too. And you can see the size of that, and that's the finest matrix specimen known of the very few members of that species that are known. It's an iron zinc arsenite, and it's not found anywhere else and hardly found at Tsumeb. This Gerd tremolite, I like the way, Mal, that you describe these as framboidal, which is like a strawberry. Very rare. This is part of the holotype specimen. We can't figure out what this is or who it's named for. We keep trying. There's no data on this, so I'll just have to pass by that. But and it's been found in a few places now, but there's still only a very, very few from Tsumeb. And here's some more Legrandite, but this is covered with rhynorite crystals as well. Again, from the zinc pocket. That's a 4 centimeter specimen. And there's a rhynorite crystal sitting on latite. And there is from the first find, those are all, as I said, zinc pocket. That's from the very first find, this crystal of rhynorite. And there's a couple that are nicer than this, but it's pretty nice. It's about 3.3 centimeters. And this stibioclauditite is part of the holotite. Bill found this. He found an interesting specimen and found these crystals. There are some more that have surfaced, so it's no longer the only specimen, but it is the holotype specimen. And here's an example of Bill's eye. This he labeled, because this was 2014, Temetsicite, which is the greenish, with mimetite, and these flattened hexagonal mimetite crystals. He just thought they were interesting, and so he decided not to part with it, even though he had better Temetsicite and certainly better mimetite. But he thought there was something about this, and there was. In 2016, it was named vinacerite because there's cadmium substituting in there, and it's a different species from mimetite, although related. So another example of his eye. There are really very few of these. There probably were more, but people thought they were mimetites and didn't keep them. This is just ridiculous. This Wilhelm Kleinite. It's a 1.2 centimeter specimen, and you see that 9 millimeter doubly terminated thing. For those of you who want to know, Wilhelm Kleinite is a zinc iron arsenate. And boy, are there only a few of those. And that's just a wonderful piece. But of course, there's another piece. And that's about a 1 centimeter crystal. Other thing interesting about that one is that it's associated with parasymplicite, which is not a mineral that you see from Tsumeb either. And these are part of the co-type specimen of zinc rosolite that Bill managed to acquire, and that's another thing that's only found, so it's co-type. It's another thing that's only found in Tsumeb. And to finish up, I will show the other. I bookended the Andy Roberts site, and here's the other min record cover of the Warraconite. There were not very many of these, and this was clearly the very, very best. And Bill talked about buying something that cost the same as his first house, but he bought it, and he loved this. And it's an extraordinary thing. It's 5 centimeters high, for those of you who have not seen it. This, too, is no longer in the collection. It's in an Eastern collection as well. And that, I think, is enough. I've used my allotted time, and I hope you've enjoyed this little tour.